Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
You are about to enter the home of a sage. In a small flat near the Arabian Sea in Bombay, India, seekers after truth from around the world are gathering in the home of the modern master, Ramesh S. Balsekar. They have come to hear Ramesh speak about Advaita, a non-dual tradition popularized in the West by Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj. Ramesh is one of the unique spiritual masters of this century. He is both a brilliant writer and a captivating speaker. Shortly after retiring as the president of the Bank of India, he met the sage, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and began translating for Maharaj's daily morning talks. It was not long before Ramesh, too, experienced the ultimate understanding. He is, therefore, a wonderful blend of East and West, spiritual and material. His warm, compassionate nature and gentle good humor infuse the room with an energy that can only be described as being uniquely Ramesh.
Okay. So who's nominated? Ken has been nominated?
Okay.
Sure.
I'd like to start with a question on the relationship between the object seen, the seer seeing the object,
Yeah.
and the process of seeing.
Yeah. What is your understanding about this at the moment?
Well, I guess my real question is the object seen, if the seer is not there, does the scene exist?
No. If the seer is not there, your question is the object there, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what you mean. If the seer is not there,
Yes.
if the seeing does not happen, if the observing does not happen, is the object there? The physicist says no,
Right.
which the mystic has been saying for years. So now the physicist says an object is not there unless it is observed.
So if there's no seer,
There is no
seeing.
object. That's
And
right.
there's no seeing.
If there is no seer, obviously there is no seeing. But not so obvious is the fact that if the seeing is not there, the object is not there.
There can be seeing with no object.
No.
No.
If there is no seer, there is no seeing. You see? And if the seer is there, then the object has to be there. How can the seer be there without the object?
And so this is the same as the basic duality between the manifest and the non-manifest.
No, the basic duality in the manifestation.
In the manifest.
The basic duality is in the manifestation. In the unmanifest and the manifest, there is no duality, Ken.
There's no duality in the unmanifest.
Between the unmanifest and the manifest, there is no duality. The duality is the basis of the manifestation and its function. That is what Buddha meant. When samsara is nirvana and nirvana is samsara. They are not two. You see, the unmanifest has become the manifest. The potential energy has activized itself.
And so the awareness of the seeing,
Yeah.
which is being accomplished by the seer,
Yes.
right? Is there a broader awareness than that? I mean,
You see,
is there also an awareness of
The seer is really also an object with senses, which enables the seer with senses to see or observe. You see, what is a seer? A seer is a sentient object. Then object which has senses, and the senses do not work unless sentience or consciousness is there.
And so the seer is also an object.
Seer is an object, quite right. The
But-
seer is an object.
Is the seeing an object?
Sorry?
Is the seeing an object?
Seeing
Yes.
is a
Seeing.
process. Seeing is a process.
So this is not an object.
Seeing is a process of the seer, between the process between the object seer seeing the object seen. Seeing is the process.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So does the unmanifest, the awareness, I guess if you talk about awareness, the awareness is the seer. Right?
The awareness is the consciousness.
The awareness is the consciousness.
Awareness or consciousness is the same thing.
Right.
So consciousness is what produces the seeing through an object which has senses. A mixer is created with machinery to do the mixing.
Is consciousness part of this body-mind organism, or is this?
No, the
No.
body-mind organism is part of the manifestation,
By the manifestation.
which is a reflection or expression of the unmanifest.
And the unmanifest is the consciousness is part of the unmanifest.
The unmanifest is the consciousness at rest, or potential energy.
Okay.
The
So
unmanifest is consciousness at rest, or potential energy, whichever way you look at it.
right. Okay.
The unmanifest becomes the manifest. Potential energy activises itself into manifestation. The
Right.
scientists call this process the Big Bang.
So
When the Big Bang happens, the unmanifest becomes the manifest. The potential energy activises itself into this manifestation.
right. And the consciousness, what we would call consciousness,
Is the basis
Is-
of everything.
is this
Consciousness of the source,
of the source.
potential energy. The source is the source of everything.
Right.
Which is not often remembered. When the question is asked, where does the ego come from? Where does the ego come from? When that question is asked, this basic, that nothing can come unless except from the source. That is not remembered.
The ego is a part of the manifestation,
Ego,
which is an object. Right?
ego is not an object, Ken.
It's not an object.
Ego is not an object. Ego is the divine hypnosis which makes an object, sentient object, think he is the doer. He is an individual separate from the rest of the manifestation. The fact is that a sentient object is an object like any other object, and therefore part of the totality of manifestation. What makes that object think that he or she is an independent, separate human being apart from the others? This separation, ego is the separation. So what causes the separation? Without which life as we know it cannot function.
By perceiving by perceiving yourself as an object, you become.
By perceiving yourself as a separate object, separate from the rest of the world,
That's the ego.
which, that is the ego. The ego is called Maya in the Hindu philosophy. I call it divine hypnosis. So the ego is created by by divine hypnosis, which makes an individual object, sentient object, feel that he or she is a separate person with free will to do what he or she wants. And that is the basis of the functioning of life as we know it.
Could it be that this divine hypnosis is part of the body-mind mechanism?
Sure. Sure.
So, and therefore it serves a function which is essential to this body-mind mechanism.
It is essential for life as we know it to happen.
So that to become aware of this process of the ego.
Yes, is all that is concerned with what is known as enlightenment or self-awareness or self-realization. This is all that is necessary. So what is the basis of the understanding, as I said? One, that each human being is merely one object with special characteristics, but nonetheless one object in the totality of manifestation. Two, therefore, there is no separateness. It is like any other object. Three, that this object is a special object in the sense that that object is a sentient object. A sentient object meaning an object with senses, with sentience, which enables the senses to operate. For the eyes to see, the ears to hear, for the tongue to taste, for the fingers to touch. That is all his. That is the understanding. So the ego that is created, the divine hypnosis creates a feeling that there is separation, as if he is a separate being with freedom to do what he likes. Freedom to do what he likes and freedom to enjoy the fruits. And because this freedom, the sense of freedom is the ego. The sense of separation and freedom is the ego, which you haven't created, which you therefore cannot kill. And yet you are told you have no problem if you have no ego. All your problems are because of the ego. So therefore get rid of the ego and be happy. Very simple. My point is, if you haven't created the ego, you cannot get rid of it. So only that power which has created the ego, or this hypnosis, can get rid of it. That is the true understanding, as according to my concept. You see?
So,
and the basis of this understanding, focused basis of this understanding is very simple. Whatever happens cannot happen, could not have happened, will not happen, unless that is what is the source intends. The source in action is God.
So if we were to achieve this state of impersonal identity,
Yes.
In what state would the divine hypnosis be in? The ego?
No, you see,
The same state.
could you repeat your question, Ken?
Would the ego still be the same ego if we achieve this
That is what I object to.
Huh?
That's what I just said. You cannot achieve it.
Okay, you can't achieve it, but if we were in a state of impersonal
If
awareness,
that state happens,
if that state happens,
because it is the will of God and the destiny of that body-mind organism, that state being self-awareness or self-realization or simply the understanding, the final understanding that I, the me, is not an entity. You see, all that exists is a uniquely programmed body-mind organism through which the source acts. Therefore, there is no me to have any independence of action. And to the extent that this happens through every body-mind organism, that every body-mind organism is a uniquely programmed instrument through which the source functions as God, bringing about what God wants to produce. So the understanding is that the me is not an object. Therefore him and she and they are not independent entities either.
And the ego,
Yes.
Once one becomes aware that the body-mind organism is the.
Let us. What you mean, Ken, is once the sense of separation is lost.
Right.
That's what you mean.
Once the sense of separation.
Once the sense of separation is lost, which means once the ego, with a sense of personal doership, is annihilated.
Okay. Okay. So that.
Then what is your question now?
Well, then is there an ego left without a sense of personal doership?
Now,
See what I mean?
the ego exists, but without the sense of personal doership.
Yeah, it does. So there still is an ego, but it just doesn't have the sense of personal doership.
That is correct.
Okay.
So what do I mean by ego without the sense of personal doership, Ken? Can you imagine an ego without the sense of personal doership?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
How? Can you explain it, Ken?
How? If you're not concerned with what the product of your action is going to be your benefit, if you're not always worried that the product of your action is going to be to your benefit,
Yes.
then you could still have an ego, but it wouldn't. It would be devoid of personal doership.
That's right. In other words, the ego is the barest minimum identification with a name and form that is necessary for that form to function.
Right.
You see, the ego without the sense of doership is identification with a name and form, just enough to enable the form to function as long as the form is alive. You see? Therefore, if the sage is called by name, he would respond. Therefore, identification with a name and form is there. You see? Ramana Maharshi gives a very beautiful simile for the existence of the ego in a sage after the self-realization or understanding has happened. He says, the ego of the sage is like the burnt remnants of a rope. There is a rope. You set fire to it. The rope burns. But at the end of the burning, what remains is a length of ash which still retains the form of the rope. But without the sense of doership, in the sense, you can't use the rope to tie up anybody. The rope, the form of the rope is still there. But it's burned ash, it's ash. So Ramana Maharshi says, the ego of the sage is like the burned remnants of a rope.
Can I come to another question?
Sure.
To me, life seems to be a cheat itself. It is based on expectations, it is based on hopes that it is going to be better if this and that happens.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Life, to me, it is a cheat. It is based on hopes and expectations.
Yes.
That is what carries it through. Only once hopes and expectations are not longer there, enlightenment happens. or it comes to an end, life comes to an end. So the question is how to get out of this game. The question is not for me to seek happiness. The question is how to disappear.
Which is the same.
No. If I would put the question, how can I get enlightenment? There is this I here that wants something.
Yeah.
No? But if the question is really for the I itself, how can I disappear that this game is finished?
Isn't it the same thing?
It is not the same thing.
Why?
No, 1 second.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
according to what you said 2 days ago about past lives and reincarnation not existing, then if I can see this, I can commit suicide, or I can at least consider this possibility as valid. I was once in the situation where I was checking out what should I do now.
Yes.
Do I exactly this catch-22, and I'm finished. I don't want it anymore.
Yes.
But how can I commit suicide? I don't know what happens after. Will I come out basically with the same setup, but worse conditions because I committed suicide? You understand? I accumulated bad karma. I committed suicide. No? Or will it be finished? So since I didn't know, would I come out somewhere else, bound in circumstances worse than now? So what's the point of committing suicide?
What is the point of committing suicide?
Then, if it is like this, if it goes into a following life, into a reincarnation, so then there is no point. But if I want to be finished and there is no reincarnation, then I can do it now.
Sure.
This is. So now you tell me, sure.
Then what?
Then now, I come to you to find this out. How can I know? How can I know how sure this sure is? I can only know it.
You cannot know. That is my whole point. A created object cannot know the will of the creator's subject. A created object cannot know the will of the creator's subject.
Even this doesn't matter.
Amban?
Even this doesn't matter in this case, because even if I consider myself as an individual,
Yes.
separate from everything,
Yes.
the way it functions is that I think I make my decisions. So I look at circumstances.
Yes.
So where do I want to go?
Yes.
No? So that's the way how it functions anyway.
That is correct.
So, and now I am in this situation.
Yes.
And I'm looking. Do I go committing? I just want to stop the game.
Yes.
Why should I go for enlightenment? Hoping for enlightenment.
Yes.
If I can stop it now,
Sure.
by committing suicide.
All right. But what I am saying is, if you are destined to commit suicide,
This is fine. This is
you will
fine.
commit suicide.
Right.
If you are not destined to commit suicide,
Yes.
you will make an effort to commit suicide,
Yes.
and that effort will not be
This I
successful.
understand. This is totally.
That is what Peter said yesterday.
Yes.
He made an effort.
Yes.
He went into a coma. And the last minute some friend of his saw him, took him to the hospital and revived him.
But so far I didn't do it because I thought, and this concept was reinforced over and over, even by Ramana Maharshi and by Punjaji, and just that there are reincarnations.
As far as rebirth is concerned, I can tell you the actual words which I have read of Ramana Maharshi. There was no rebirth. There is no rebirth. There
has
will
never been any.
there will be no rebirth. This is the truth.
Yes, this I understand.
So you accept or don't accept. What is there to understand?
This I understand, but at the same time he says about, I think it was Palaniswami, with whom he died,
Yeah.
and he did the same thing like what he did with his mother, but he said it was not successful, enlightenment didn't happen, he will be reborn in a higher world, from where he will get
No,
enlightenment.
so
This
he
is-
may, you see, what he said was a translation. What he meant, may not, he has to use the word he, so what he meant was, as I think, a new birth will happen.
Fine.
A
To
new
another
birth,
individual who is against
no, a
suffering.
new birth will be born, with which the earlier person will not be concerned.
No, because he doesn't know the earlier person. But again, a me is here, suffering. So I don't mind if I have existed yesterday. It doesn't matter. I'm existing now. That will be then again. So where can I stop this game?
Not in your control.
Can it be? I mean, how?
Not in your control.
I mean, what stops after enlightenment then?
Pardon?
What stops after enlightenment? Birth will take place over and over everywhere.
Sure. As has been happening for thousands of years.
Suffering will happen over and over again.
Yes.
I
So
mean, what
there
a
will be
game
further
is
thousands
this?
of years. So, what is your question?
What a game is this?
But
What a game is this?
what game this is, a created object cannot know what the game is created by the creator's subject. I can only repeat that. A created object cannot get the answer of why the creator's subject did what. You cannot know. And if you say, not knowing means misery, I would say yes, of course. Not knowing means misery. And that misery, not knowing, bringing about this misery, is the destiny of this body-mind organism.
But I mean, this makes the catch 2022 really complete.
Certainly.
No way.
No way.
way.
No way. No way can a created object know the will of the creator subject. No way. You see, the seeking is the misery. And the real thing is, you can't even end the seeking. Not in your control. What you are saying, what you are really saying is, this seeking is misery. I want to end it.
Yes.
But it's not in your control even to end the seeking. That is the point.
What a play is consciousness playing with itself.
Yes. So if consciousness is playing game with itself, how are you concerned?
Because I am consciousness. And
Then
but I am experiencing suffering.
yes, and that is because it is part of the consciousness, functioning of consciousness, that this body-mind organism is supposed to suffer misery at this point of time. And that is what is happening. And again I'll give you the same answer. A created object wants to know how to end the suffering. And the created object cannot have the answer which only the creator's subject has.
But it can consider suicide as a valid.
Pardon?
It can consider suicide as a valid means.
Who?
The created object
The created
can
object.
consider suicide as a valid means to end and can go towards the act. For sure, if it is destined, then it goes that way.
That's right.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So if
And
it
then
is,
even this talk can have its make a turning point.
sure, sure. Any point can be the turning point. So in the case of Peter, probably the turning point was that he, as far as he was concerned, he had committed suicide.
Yeah.
As far as he was concerned, he had committed suicide. And yet there he was, back again in life. So that could have been the turning point. Then the turning point could be, if I commit suicide and yet I am not dead, then I am not supposed to be dead. You see?
Yes.
That could be the turning point. So,
It seems like surrender is just to accepting suffering.
that is correct. True surrender is accepting suffering or happiness as it happens.
Yesterday you say enjoy life.
Yeah.
What happens? How really to enjoy suffering?
Enjoy life as it happens. So, if the suffering is there, you accept the suffering.
You don't enjoy it. You accept
Well,
it.
I mean, by enjoying life means accepting life as it happens. Accepting life as it happens. Enjoying life means not having an expectation. If you have an expectation, you can't enjoy life.
But over this you either have control. You neither have control.
That is the whole point. You have no control. You really have no control. That is the bottom line. You have no control over anything. Any questions? Are you here for the first time?
I came a few years ago, but
I see.
I just came last night.
I see.
I have a question about there is stillness,
Yes.
and there is beauty in that stillness.
Quite right.
Then there is the mind coming
Yes.
and wanting to claim that for itself.
Yes.
And there is a knowledge that that claiming is what will push it away.
That's right.
So there is a resistance against the mind.
Yes.
And it's the same movement, that
Mhm.
resistance.
I'm sorry?
It's as if it's the same movement. The
It-
resistance, the mind wanting to hold, and the resistance against the mind.
Yes.
So that's all an identification with something that can be lost, no?
That is correct. That is correct.
It's because there's enjoyment, though.
You see, the enjoyment is only what is your name?
Brijbala,
Brijbala.
huh.
I see. What part of the world are you from?
From Australia
From
originally.
Australia, yes. Now you see, in that experience of stillness, which you say is beautiful, Brijbala says that stillness is beautiful.
Yes.
When does Brijbala say that that stillness is beautiful?
When she wants to keep it.
That is, after the stillness was over.
It's after already, yes.
In that stillness, Brijbala is not there.
Yes. Yes.
So Brijbala later
Yes.
comes in and says, that was beautiful, I must have it again.
Yes.
And you can't have it.
It's gone.
Because, why Brijbala? Why will it not come again? Or is not likely to come again? Because Brijbala didn't bring it about.
Yes.
Brijbala didn't bring about that stillness. That stillness happened because it was God's will and the destiny of this body, mind, organism. So only that power which brought about that stillness at that time can bring it about again if there is no Brijbala wanting it and expecting it. So the wanting and the expectation is the obstruction. So if the stillness happens, accept it. And when Brijbala comes into the picture and says that was enjoyable, fine. I'm not saying it in the, you refute it. No, well, the feeling comes, that was enjoyable, fine, leave it at that. That's my point.
Mm.
It's expectation, wanting it again, which creates the obstruction.
Mm.
How long have you been seeking Brijbala?
Forever.
Yes, that's, you'll be surprised how often the answer is. Ever since, what you mean is, ever since you can remember.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Strongly since my late teens.
Sorry?
Like my late teens.
Since your teens?
Yeah.
I see. Do you remember how it happened? Did you decide at any moment from tomorrow I shall seek whatever it is I'm seeking?
No. There was a love of the stillness, though.
Yes. So that stillness must have happened
Yes.
by itself. When do you suppose that stillness happened, Brijbala? At what, when and in what circumstances, let me say, did that first stillness that you can remember happen? Surely not on the playground, or it could be on the playground. Not in the classroom, it could be in the classroom.
I don't remember when it first happened, but I do remember recognizing that it has always been there.
I see, I see. And that was when you were fairly young?
No, that was until later,
I see.
some years ago.
And since then you have been seeking that stillness? Would that be right?
Enjoying and seeking.
Yes, sure. Since then you have been seeking that stillness.
Yeah.
And how far have you succeeded, Brijbala? Are you still seeking it?
Sometimes it comes, I say, as a random act of
Every
grace.
time it comes, Brijbala.
Yes.
Not sometimes. That's my whole point.
Hmm.
Every time it comes.
Hmm.
Because it wants to come. Not because Brijbala wants it. You see? So if that is truly accepted, that the stillness comes when it is supposed to come, and that Brijbala can do nothing about it, the more deeply, the more unconditionally it is accepted, the more frequently and the deeper it will happen. The more there is Brijbala seeking, the less frequently will it happen, and when it does happen, it won't be as deep as it would be if there is no Brijbala seeking it. That is the whole point. So whatever happens, let it happen. Don't go after it, don't seek it. That is my suggestion. And even that is not in your control. What do you do in life, Brijbala? Are you married and look after a family?
This is my husband,
Yes.
and mostly we've been living in India.
I'm sorry?
Mostly we've been living in India,
Oh yes, I see.
in the north, in Lucknow.
I see.
And we have a business,
In Lucknow?
no, in between Australia and Germany. So we
Oh.
can be half the year here and half the year there.
Oh, I see. That's convenient. isn't
Very
it?
convenient, yeah.
Yes. Now, how did that happen, do you suppose?
Grace.
Again, yes.
Yeah,
You see, so it's no use someone asking, how did Brijbala manage that?
yeah.
It just happens. Everything just happens. Your name is?
Sudama.
Sudama?
Yes.
I see. And you have also been interested?
Yes, I have been living in Lucknow for 5 years
I see.
and being with Punjaji.
I see.
And I thought very much, because I had a very deep meeting with him and I always felt, yeah, that is liberation.
I see.
And just a few weeks, just a few months ago,
Yes.
when he left his body, I was very much confronted with death and identification with body.
Yes.
I had a dream one night and I was
Yes.
waking up in that dream, or I was coming out of this dream was about dying. I was dying.
Yes.
I was dying in some sort of an accident.
Yes.
And there was this total no coming up, this total non-acceptance and total being identified with my body.
Yes.
And I thought,
And
oh,
not
wow,
wanting to die.
not wanting to die under no
That's-
circumstances.
Sure.
I just got married.
Yes.
Dying is not on. There's no way.
Yes.
And I thought, oh wow, if I'm still so identified with life and identified with my body,
Yes.
how can I say I'm free?
Then when did this thought come? When you were awake?
No, during that dream. In
Oh,
that
during
moment,
that dream.
During that
Oh,
dream.
really? I
Yeah,
see. I
yeah.
see. I see.
Or was it after? maybe just the moment I was waking up from
That's
that dream,
right.
you know?
That is more likely.
Yeah,
You see, that is more likely.
yeah,
What happens in the dream is an experience,
yeah,
which was the sheer terror of the phenomenon of death.
right.
That was the experience.
Yeah, total terror, yeah.
Sheer terror of the phenomenon of death. Then Sudama wakes up and says, the thought comes as a result of the brain reacting to the dream and saying, if I am so afraid of death, then how can liberation come? How can the self-realization come?
Yeah.
You see? So what was the answer, Sudama?
I'm still seeking for the answer. I'm confused about that. Because the identification with wanting to live was so strong
Yes.
that my idea about being free is no identification with anything, not with life, not with death, not with any thought, emotion, and not with the body, and wanting to have a body.
Yes.
But I see very clearly that I have this identification, wanting to live in a body and enjoying that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how can I be free on that?
You see, the only way to be free of the fear of death,
Yeah.
and when I say fear of death, I mean the fear of the phenomenon of death, not with the fear of the process of death. They're two different things. Tell me, Sudama, are you afraid of deep sleep?
No. I enjoy deep sleep very much.
Then you should enjoy death, which is also just a longer sleep. So if the short deep sleep is so enjoyable, would not a longer, much longer death, sleep, be even more enjoyable?
Maybe.
You see? But I'll tell you why you are not worried about deep sleep. Because deep down, the mind says, I am sleeping now, but I shall wake up tomorrow morning.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
But here if I die, I may not wake up at all. That is the fear, isn't it? And the answer to that fear is what I've just told you. Deep sleep. Now, let me put it this way. If you knew that you are not going to wake up, would you be able to not to go to sleep?
Probably not.
No.
But for me, the problem comes in there, because in deep sleep, I'm not aware of consciousness. I'm not aware of anything.
No. In deep sleep, you are not aware of Sudama.
Right. That is true.
You see? And in death, the same thing will happen. That is one way. The other way to look at it is, birth and death happens to whom? Not to Sudama. Sudama is just a name.
Right.
So the birth and death, creation and destruction, happens to an object. And the birth and death of an object has been going on for thousands of years. For thousands of years, bodies have been born and bodies have been dying.
You see, I don't have the experience of the subject separate from the object, or that it exists even different. My experience is awareness and consciousness existing while I'm in the body.
I know. So, but this experience which you say is in the body is absent in deep sleep.
That's true.
That is why you enjoy deep sleep, Sudama. Why do you enjoy deep sleep? Simply because Sudama is not there. That is the whole point of enjoying deep sleep. Because deep sleep is the state of mind which is really the same between two thoughts. But the interval between two thoughts is very short. But the interval in the deep sleep is quite longer. And therefore that is enjoyable. And that is enjoyable because Sudama is not there. So what is born and dies? It's the body which is born and dies, which is an object. And that has been happening for thousands of years. So my point is, about a phenomenon which has been going on for thousands of years and will go on for thousands of years, why be concerned about it? Why be concerned about a phenomenon which has been going on for thousands of years and will continue to go on for thousands of years? And what is the phenomenon? A body being created and the body being destroyed.
Yes, I was seeing it a little bit like this before I experienced the terror of death.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's the problem.
the terror of death simply means that the identification is still there.
Yeah.
And your question really is that you would like to get rid of the identification.
That I don't want to get rid of the identification?
You want to.
I want to, yeah, definitely,
Isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah,
So
yeah, well, yeah.
you want to get rid of
Yeah.
the identification. The identification is the ego. So you want to get rid of the ego. But my question then is, you didn't create the ego, did you, Sudam? You didn't create the ego. So if you didn't create the ego, how can you destroy it? So only that power which created the ego, the identification, can get rid of it. So if you didn't create the ego, where did the ego come from? Where could anything have come from?
For from the same where it is.
Only the source.
Yeah.
Where could anything have come from? It could only have come from the source. So this ego also has come from the source. So it is only the source which can demolish the ego. You see? And you have no control over the source.
Right.
So if there is something over which you have no control, what can you do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing I can
That's
do.
the whole point.
Yeah. It's a problem.
You see? So the problem dissolves.
Yeah.
The problem remains. If Sudama thinks, I must do something about it, the problem dissolves when it is total acceptance. So that there is nothing Sudama can do about it. Then the problem dissolves. The problem remains only so long as there is a feeling that Sudama can do something about it. So only the total conviction that Sudama can do nothing about it, the problem dissolves. Have you also been looking now?
Brijbala.
Brijbala said, this seeking, whatever it is, has been there ever since you can remember.
Right.
What about you? Same thing?
Yeah, very early.
I see.
Very early. Like in, 10, 11, 12. I think, in that age.
You'll be astonished how many people give that answer. You see, ever since I can remember. So did you two get together at Lucknow?
Yes.
I see. So you were seeking independently.
Yeah.
You were seeking independently something you didn't know what. But ultimately what you found was each other. So be happy with it.
That's why he's afraid of death. You see, he might lose Brijbala.
Yes,
Yes.
quite right. That is the attachment. You see. So the only answer is not to be afraid of losing something. That is, you see, the biggest problem about possession. What is the biggest problem about possession? The fear of losing it. You see? The fear of losing it. And that is the only difference between the sage and an ordinary person. The fear of losing it. What happens in the case of a sage is that there is total acceptance of the fact, as Kabir puts it, as the sage, Saint Kabir puts it, you came with your fists closed. You will go with your palms open. So when you came, there was nothing in the fist. And when you go, you will go with your hands open. So you never did have any possession at any time. So whatever possessions come your way, enjoy them while they are there. But if you are afraid of losing them, then even when they are in your possession, you won't be able to enjoy those possessions for the fear of losing them. Therefore, renouncing, which is the basis of the Bhagavad Gita and a lot of other teachings, renouncing, it's a grossly misunderstood word. Renouncing does not mean giving up what you have. It does not mean giving up what you have. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, have you read Bhagavad Gita at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
I see. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, he says, you know how it began? Arjuna saying, I see the armies arrayed before me, which contain not only my relatives, but my friends, not only my close friends, but my preceptors. How can I kill my preceptors? So he lays down his bow. So the relevant answer to that is that Lord Krishna says, you think you are going to kill them. Therefore, you have this feeling of guilt. But the fact of the matter is that I have already killed them. I have already killed them. In the long-term view of what is happening, you only see so all you can be is the instrument for their death. And if you see it this way, that no one kills, but the killing happens, and that killing I have already done. Therefore, he says, then he stays still further. He says, you may decide not to fight, but it will be a futile decision. You may decide not to fight, but it will be a futile decision, because your programming, you have been born a warrior, you are trained to be a warrior. Your programming will make you fight. So your decision not to fight will be futile. Therefore, he says, get up, fight, and then fight, win the war, and enjoy the fruits of victory. He doesn't say give up the fruits of victory. He doesn't say fight, win, and then take the ochre ropes and go into the Himalayas. He doesn't say that. He says fight, win, enjoy the fruits of victory. You see? So renouncing does not mean giving up what you have. Why not? Because what you think you have is not really yours. It's been handed down to you by God or the source. Why has God handed you something to be enjoyable? Enjoy it. So the renouncing is not renouncing what you have, but renouncing the fear of losing what you have. So you have life. The best way to enjoy life is not to be afraid of losing it. So long as life is there, enjoy it.
Thank you.